Hello, my name is Antoinette, and this is my fucking story. This is due to an unexpected pregnancy. Just so you know, I was 16 when I found out, and of course I wasn't married yet. I was in high school, so it was a shock. In short, watch and listen. By the way, yes, please do not forget to like the video, write comments, and be sure to subscribe to this channel. Like many girls from school, when I moved to the senior class, I dreamed of meeting a cool guy. It was important for me that he was beautiful, popular, that he drove a car, and of course, fell in love with me. I can't say I was a total bitch at school, probably something in between, but I still had more enemies than friends. Maybe that's why I wanted to start a stable relationship as soon as possible. Because of my complex nature, I didn't date anyone for a long time, and it didn't go beyond stupid dates until I met Justin. Oh, he was my crush. I just fell in love with his six-pack. This jock had changed noticeably over the summer, while we were on vacation. No one had noticed it, at least not me. But as soon as he transformed, he immediately became a magnet for the girls. He became popular among the boys as well. I also had my eye on him. It's amazing how quickly people change when they get their hands on money. We learned that Just had been left an inheritance by his dead grandmother, and she was far from poor. In general, our boy bought a car, dressed up, changed his style of clothing a little, and became the elite of the school. I was determined that this was my best chance to get him hooked. It wasn't hard to do that while he was still getting the taste of it. I just supposedly fainted when he passed by, pretended that I was a damsel in distress, then he took me out into the fresh air, and then I decided to thank him by inviting him to dinner. We had a nice time, and I could feel that he was a little shy, as if he was afraid of me. At the end of the evening, after a bottle of champagne, he still admitted that he thought I was inaccessible to him. It was flattering. Then everything was simple. I was the first to give him a kiss, from which he almost went crazy. Well, the next day, we were acting like we were a couple, officially. Oh, you should have seen the envious looks of both girls and boys. I was ready to take everything on video and watch it every day. Just himself still didn't really understand anything. From the surging emotions to the money and the gorgeous girl, he was a little blown away. This happens and all this passes later, but for now, he was mine and only mine. So we started dating. The fool was falling in love with me every day. I could feel it. I wanted to use him as much as possible. He carried my bags, did my homework, made expensive gifts, all of which gave my reputation a spice and was only a plus. This went on for a month. And then Justin asked for a little more of a serious relationship. How can I tell you? Something like going to another level? And I agreed. Everything was romantic, but the poor guy didn't think that I already had experience with sex, and he probably didn't have any yet. It was doubly fun to know that I was his first, you know? In short, life went on, and then one day, I noticed I was late. I was alarmed, and very much so. I immediately ran to the doctor for an examination. I passed the test, and she told me that I was pregnant. What? I asked, and that was all I could manage to say. The ground gave way beneath my feet, and I felt as if my heart was going to stop. I was confused and didn't know what to do. I didn't go back to school that day. I didn't pick up the phone at all, and I didn't want to talk to anyone, including Justin. I needed time to digest the information. I was thinking, what if I terminated the pregnancy? But I read a lot of articles on this topic on the internet. The risk of being without children forever scared me. And what if I could never have them again? What if I become infertile? It was scary. Then there was only one way out, to talk to Justin. After all, the baby was his and I had to tell him. He came to pick me up in the evening, and we went to our favorite cafe as usual. Just offered me wine or champagne, but I declined. "What's wrong with you, love? You seem in a mood," he said. I didn't say anything for a long time, and then I blurted it out. "I'm pregnant," I told him. He froze in place. His eyes opened wide. He was breathing heavily, and all he could say was, "Are you sure?" I nodded, and he was like, "Damn." And then I burst out. "The hell? You say damn? Is that all? What's in your stupid head right now? I'm pregnant with your baby, you know that?" I didn't notice that I was already yelling at the whole cafe. Jess was embarrassed, dropped the money for the table, and grabbed my arm as we ran out of the cafe. Jess was so pale. He was silent all the way, and then I left, and he never said a word to me. I sat in my room and didn't leave the house, didn't pick up the phone, and didn't answer his messages. A day later, this fool came to me, stood under my window, and began to sing a love song. It was terribly funny. I only went out so the neighbors wouldn't call the police. He got down on one knee and asked me to marry him. I didn't want to agree, but he hugged me, apologized for being confused, and then said that everything would be fine because he loved me. And suddenly I was so ashamed. Ashamed that I thought of him as an object, that I twisted him to what I wanted, used him for profit, and he turned out to be such a decent and kind guy. I cried and agreed. Just promised to talk to my parents. He chose a place and time and invited us all to dinner. We met there, and my parents didn't know anything yet. I just said that my boyfriend wanted to meet them. The evening went well, and in the end, Justin looked at me and asked for a moment of attention from my parents. They froze, waiting to see what he was going to do. At that moment, my phone rang. It was my gynecologist. While Justin was giving his opening speech about his feelings for me, I picked up the phone and walked away. Antoinette, hey, sorry, it turns out there was a problem. Your tests were mixed up with someone else's. You're not pregnant, the doctor said, then hung up. I was shocked and confused again. I looked at Jus, and he kept talking, and when he said, I wanted to tell you something and ask you something, I realized that I couldn't fool him, and then I ran and blurted out, Justin and I would like to go to Brooklyn this weekend. Will you let me go? And my parents smiled. I lied that there would be a group of friends, and they let me go. Jus's words froze in his mouth, and I whispered that I would explain later. Anyway, we talked later, but Justin said he wasn't going to give up on me now or then. And I finally realized that I really love him, and now everything will be different for us. Even better.
I will say at once that I have already taken on a barrage of criticism and condemnation, so it is not necessary to engage in demoralizing now. I'll just share my story with you. Perhaps this will serve as a lesson, and maybe someone else was in the same situation as me. And you can subscribe and watch other animations. After all, we still have a lot of interesting stories. My name is Julia. I was 17 when I became a mother, and I still do not know who the father of the child and how it all happened. I only remember that evening, but all in order. To begin with, I was the oldest child in the family. In general, there are 3 of us. In addition to me, there are 2 sisters. Even though our parents worked very hard, we still had enough money to live on. I understood perfectly well that as the eldest child in a large family, I simply had to study well, get a decent education in order to get a job in the future, and take care of my family. My parents weren't young. For this reason, I gave up all my energy to study. Just so you know, I didn't have any friends or romantic relationships with guys just because I protected myself from it. All this could interfere with academic performance and consequently disrupt plans. And everything seemed to go as planned. I was the head of the class, the favorite of the teachers, a diligent student and an obedient daughter. But I was unhappy inside. It seemed to me that I was not living for myself, and what I was doing now was not mine either. As soon as these thoughts crossed my mind, I pushed them away. Sitting around and being sad is not a luxury my family can't afford. And then one day the school had to hold a disco. Everyone loved this kind of party. I never went there, but this time the teacher told me how to control the Headman classmates. They will go to the dance if they pass the history test as well, the teacher said. Well, otherwise they will not be allowed to the evening, and I, as the headman, had to make sure that no one got there. Of course, many people failed the test, but the desire to go to the disco remained. I did everything to prevent my classmates from getting there. First, I made several warnings, and then I threatened to give the teacher a list of violators by name. This was a weighty argument, and my classmates gave up, so I thought. No one spoke to me the next day. They made me an outcast, stopped greeting me, did not notice, ignored absolutely all words. A week later, I couldn't stand it and apologized. Even though I didn't have any friends, it's not so nice to suddenly become an empty place. The guys didn't immediately forgive me, but then one of my classmates told me that I should come to his house for a party and hang out with them properly. Of course, I did not immediately agree, but then I thought that maybe I deserved a rest at least once. When I got home, I fed everyone dinner, cleaned up, waited until everyone was asleep, and quietly left. When I arrived at the designated address, I saw a large house in front of me where music was blaring all over the street. When my classmates saw me, they clapped and said they were happy to see me. I didn't even know what to do next because this is the first party in my life. They offered me a drink, but I refused. Then I was told that I should play a game where the loser drank as much alcohol as they poured for him. Of course, I lost. And at first I refused to play, but I was again addressed as boring, excellent student, too correct, and I challenged myself. In a few minutes, I was drunk. Then I vaguely remember what happened, only fragments. As if I felt bad, I was in the toilet, then someone helped me up to the room. I was so sleepy. They helped me take off my clothes, and that was it. I fell right to sleep. And in the morning, I woke up and saw myself sleeping without clothes in a strange room on a bed. I was alone. There was an unpleasant taste of alcohol aftertaste in my mouth. My head ached and my lower abdomen ached terribly. There was blood on the bed, but I didn't care. I could not even think that something like this could happen to me. I screamed when I saw the time. The clock was 10 a.m. I was late to school and never came home. After a quick wash, I ran to school. My classmates greeted me with cheers and applause. My instantly flushed cheeks spoke for themselves. Hell, something obviously happened yesterday that everyone knows about except me. At recess in the toilet, the girls came up to me with questions about how I felt. I didn't really say anything. And then they whispered in my ear that I was now one of the others. Others? Any others? I asked. They looked at each other and realized that I didn't remember anything. Well, the next sentence gave me a shock. It turns out I wasn't alone last night. But who was I with? No one knows. I needed time to digest the information. I was just horrified by what I heard. But that's not all. When I got home, my mother gave me a full lecture. I didn't want to believe what was happening. After a couple of months, the discussions ended, and by the way, I still have friends, and I'm back on track, with the exception of my condition. My body was behaving strangely. I didn't understand what was happening to my body, my well-being. A month later, I got a small belly. I went to the hospital for discomfort and pain and heard from the doctor that I was pregnant. Oh no! Oh no! This can't be happening! How? How did this happen? The doctor looked at me in surprise and said that she was obliged to inform my parents about everything. I begged her not to do it, but she said she would then report it to the appropriate authorities. I chose the lesser of evils. My mother arrived at the hospital in 10 minutes. She was as shocked as I was. And the most shameful thing is that I could not answer the basic questions. How and from whom? At home, I had a long, painful conversation with my parents. In the end, we decided to keep the baby. To be honest, this decision was not easy because it meant that I had to radically change my life. And first, I dropped out of school, accepted that I didn't know who the baby's father was, and put off my plans for a good job. My parents supported me, though not immediately. My mother told me that the child had nothing to do with it and that she and my father would do anything to help me. And now, very soon, I will become a mother. These have been difficult months in my life, but I feel like I did the right thing. No matter what, I will give the child all the love.